having ticked over to 11 o'clock and just passed, I'd love to kick off this webinar by saying hey to everybody here and really just welcoming the ESN Clear team. And Leo, we've been working together quite closely in working to build up your expression of interest audience, which is now well over 200 strong. And we're looking to launch the investment offer very soon. And I'd love to introduce yourself, Andrew, but I feel like I won't do it full justice. So I'd love to hand over to you guys briefly to quickly introduce yourselves before we get away with the first questions.
Sure. I might just quickly start. So I'm founder and managing director of ESN Clear. My name is Leo de Bruin, and I've got an investment banking background, and I moved to C-level roles, and over the last 3 years have spent my time building ESN Clear.
Awesome.
Hello. And I'm Andrew Coates. I'm chairman of ESN Clear. I'm a career cardiologist, so I've had sort of 3 separate aspects of my career. I'm a clinician, so I've been a heart issue specialist and head of the Europe's largest heart hospital in the past, Royal Brompton and Harefield. I'm also a university leader, so I've been Dean and Deputy Vice Chancellor of the University of Sydney. And also I'm interested in medical device companies and biopharma. So I've got a number of patents and spin-outs through Imperial College, and I'm presently president of the Heart Failure Association, the largest heart failure group in the world.
Awesome. Fantastic. Fantastic. And I think everybody's probably going to have a fairly clear understanding of what ESN Clear is and what the company has done. But I'd really love to hear from your perspective of really how you've got here as a company and what you've managed to achieve to date, because I think in summary, it doesn't always do it justice to just read a little bit of text and really understand that. It really does bode well to come from the founders. So I'd love to hear that to really kick off this webinar.
Absolutely, Robin, thank you. So ESN Clear was founded on the basis of why heart failure and heart disease is such a big problem and such a top killer in the world. My family suffer heart disease. I've got at least 4 uncles that either passed away or suffer heart disease. And about 3 years ago, we as a family thought we want to try and tackle this issue. And we put a top team of scientists and engineers and doctors together to try and understand and tackle the issue. And we've built a prototype device that now can early detect this risk of heart failure, because essentially the problem that we are tackling is not diagnosing a disease that already exists, but to prevent it, so to detect it before it happens. And that's very important. So what we've achieved so far is we've got strong peer-reviewed science, and we've developed a working prototype device. We've developed an app with an end-to-end software platform and a machine learning algorithm that's highly accurate, so 95.5% accurate. And we've developed IP on the specific biomarkers for this early risk detection that's at PCT stage currently, pending review. And we also have a US patent to secure this drug device strategy, or lockout strategy as we call it, with Big Pharma.
Fantastic. Did you want to add to that at all, Andrew?
Yeah, I might mention heart failure is an interesting condition because it's not a single disease. It's the end stage of a lot of blood vessel and heart disease processes. So things we've heard about: angina, heart attacks, hypertension, diabetes, and even old age all lead to heart failure. And one of the problems we have is that heart failure is a condition of amazing success. We now have 7 different treatments that reduce death rate, but only, and that's the critical one, only if you know you've got heart failure. And the problem is none of these drugs or devices are indicated for people who are at risk of getting heart failure. And yet 1/3 of all the deaths occur the first time they're ever present. And that's where we're trying to get in. Find out when people are at risk of getting heart failure and getting those treatments on board quickly.
Yeah, completely understand. Completely understand. And I just want to highlight to people who are tuning in that throughout the webinar, we'd love to accept questions around, obviously the offer and ESN Clear. So there's actually a Q&A feature which you can click on down the bottom, ask your question there. And while we will be going through a number of different questions really to fully understand the business, as well as some FAQs that the company's already been asked, we'd love to be able to ask these throughout the webinar. So if you pop your question in there, we will pick it up as we go along. But one of the other questions which I wanted to ask is that you've previously raised capital and you hold a number of patents and licenses in place. Could you talk a little bit more maybe about the strategy as to why you've done this and why it's essential for the business to have this in place before you go ahead with your commercial launch? And really, this is a pretty simple question for a medtech business, but I'd love you to really explain it in simple terms for every investor to be able to fully understand this.
Yeah, sure. So IP is very important, as you can imagine, to secure our place in the market. So essentially, we have a portfolio of intellectual property that we're building, and that's the core value of the business, and that drives the size and the speed of our exit strategy, such as licensing the IP to big pharma or medical devices businesses, either licensing or even a trade sale. So we've got the IP on the biomarkers, as I alluded to earlier, to secure this non-invasive early heart failure risk detection space, as Andrew mentioned, and then this US patent that we lodged through Wilson Sonsini about 9 months ago, that acts as this lockout strategy. Therefore, other companies can't detect early risk and then also treat the patient so early detected. That's an ESN carved out space, if you like. So if big pharma partners with us, we could help them increase their sales due to this lockout strategy. And that's essentially very important for us before we go to market to have all of this in place, which at this moment, it's 99% there. With our clinical study, we're going to strengthen one of the patents, and the other one is at PCT stage. So it's looking, pretty strong at this stage.
I might flesh that out a little bit. So we do have several routes to market and profitability. One is direct sales for people who just want to know the risk. They might be going somewhere remote. They may have heart disease in the family, and they'd like to know and get that security. But the other option is big pharma is very interested for two reasons. One is they're selling drugs that can treat heart disease, but they know that the payers don't want to give these drugs to half the population. So a device like this would say, these are the people who will really benefit. So they've got a much better cost benefit analysis to go to reimbursement authorities and say, look, if you do this test, then our drug will go absolutely where it's needed. So that's benefit number one, which is widely appreciated. But benefit number two is that some of the companies have patents that expire soon, and then generic substitution could eat into their profits enormously. Whereas if they do a trial based on our test being positive, then they get a protected indication based on our patent. So if you choose one of these modern drugs like dapagliflozin or empagliflozin, if it's based on the fact that a patient's been detected because of an ESN clear test, then everyone's protected, the company's protected. No one can use an alternative agent or even generic version of their own based on that, because that's protected by our patent. So the combination of a patented diagnostic test actually gives an effective prolongation of the patent of the drug.
Yeah, it's really interesting, and I think that actually almost perfectly leads into another question, which I'd love to be able to kind of tease out in this session, which is direct competition, because there really aren't products like this in the market, and if there are, you've already you've understood your commercial route to being able to help big business in the sense of what they're already creating. So these drugs which really can help to maintain this. But how would big pharma be selling these products before, and what routes were there to help people to really actually detect early onset heart failure?
Well, so what we're discussing with big pharma now, obviously, companies like AstraZeneca, Boehringer Ingelheim, etc., they are not traditionally medical devices companies. But what they are planning and what we're planning, what we're talking about, the whole discussion is to have a companion device diagnostic. So really to partner and as Andrew mentioned, with going into a clinical trial where people are detected, let's say ESN clear positive, so this early risk of heart failure positive, and then people are either given a placebo or the drug, and we prove that when people are detected with high risk and given this drug, the admission rates are less, hospital admission rates, and mortality is reduced as well. So that would be the big proof that we want to prove in the market or in a trial. And then what would essentially happen is that would be seen as an A product. So that would go through to an FDA submission as a single treatment, so a device plus drug, treatment or product, if you like. So that'll be almost sold together. People would go to a physician. They would, if they look like they might be at risk, i.e., obesity, diabetes, they're of age, a number of risk factors. If the device is then given to a person and they're detected at high risk, it's then in the guidelines, and the doctor can literally prescribe that drug because of that positive indication.
Got it. That's great. And yeah, look, I mean, they're really, and when it comes to it, competition, this is a very new product, but it's really taking care of and identifying something which there's already drugs out there for it, which essentially means big pharma. This is kind of the perfect storm for them, really.
Exactly.
They are absolutely wanting to be able to accelerate this product. Have you been developing these relationships over a long period of time? And they're surely welcoming a product like ESN Clear to the market.
Absolutely. I mean, really what's changed over the last let's call it few months almost, let's call it last 12 months, is the focus has shifted from monitoring acute heart failure and treating acute heart failure. And people are now looking more towards really, how do you save lives? How do you make heart disease less impactful on people's lives and families? And that is in the preventative space. So dapagliflozin, which is the AstraZeneca drug, had a trial called DAPA-HF, and the results came out in November last year, and that was very good results. It showed that it does, two endpoints: reduce hospital admissions and reduce mortality rates in people, whether they have diabetes or not. It's heart failure, early heart failure people, and empagliflozin, which is the Boehringer Ingelheim drug. I think that was as early as May this year, the trial came out. So these drugs are blockbuster drugs. They're new in the market, but the emphasis has moved to this early risk detection. But what we see, and this is answering the direct competition question, these companies, these big pharmas, we've had deep conversations with them over quite an extended period of time with their group level directors, such as Olivier Delanoy, etc. We are the only ones at this time playing in this early risk detection space. The other companies that are in heart failure, even medical devices, whether it's an AI software platform, etc., are usually companies that are playing in the known heart failure, or it's already heart failure diagnosed, but how to better treat people and how to better monitor the treatment, etc. So we call it heart failure monitoring devices, whereas ours is really this almost new indication, and we at this time don't have a competition for that space, for the specific detection space.
Yeah, amazing. Was there anything else you wanted to add to this, Andrew, or can you still hear me? I think you're just on mute, by the way.
Andrew, I think
I had just a little bit of a dropout, but
yeah, I think so. yeah, we did experience a little bit of a dropout. One thing as well, which is really interesting and exciting, is you're currently or about to go through a clinical trial for the product itself. Now,
correct.
So many businesses which are in an early stage like yourself are asked this question. And you've got a really strong and solid answer. So why don't you talk through a little bit about the stages of the clinical trial, what you've set up, what you've structured, and what your predictive potential outcomes are.
Absolutely. So I'll give you a high-level answer first, and we might delve into it as we go. This clinical trial, as we call it, really technically classifies rather as a clinical study because it doesn't involve a drug yet. So really all we're doing is a cross-sectional study for the device. We're doing the bare minimum really of what we need to do to get our device approved in early next year. So we're looking to recruit a few hundred people. We can follow them up over a period of time. And really all we are now doing is our previous study showed how we can very accurately differentiate between asymptomatic stage 1 heart failure people versus controls. And we're just honing in on that space and saying, this is asymptomatic heart failure. Well, how about, how far, what does it look like between healthy and stage 1, and how accurately can we differentiate the risk elements as they increase from healthy towards stage 1. What we expect from the study, and it's a quick study, we anticipate a few months before we actually use the data for a March, April approximate regulatory submission.
Yep.
Is we expect higher accuracy numbers. The 95.5% we have currently is on a data set that was had a few elements to it that, or let me put it this way, that had elements lacking to that data pool. So the accuracy we got was actually phenomenal of what the data pool looked like. We actually envisaged that the number would go up, but what we need is the important thing. If our device is 90% or more accurate, the industry at large accept it. It's a medical device usually doesn't need to be more accurate than that, depending on its the disease state, what it diagnoses, etc. So we are not saying people have heart failure or don't have heart failure. That's not what this device tells you. What it does tell you is how accurately, and very accurately, whether you're at high risk of developing heart failure or not. So we differentiate that. So we expect from the study good accuracy numbers, of course, good new data. And what Big Pharma has told us is they want to see a month or so of extra data, and then we might start discussing more details about how we can potentially work together as partners.
Yes, so interesting. Sorry, did you want to add to that as well, Andrew?
No, I think Leo sort of covered that. We clearly see that we'll need to partner. So the strategy of a companion diagnostic device means that Big Pharma would be very interested in seeing our device developed because they get the added benefit from it. But, we're a relatively small company. Big Pharma's a big company, not in devices. So it may well be there's a stepping stone of one of the major diagnostic companies like Roche Diagnostics or Abbott, who may gobble up our program, this particular program we might sell or license, and then they would partner with a Big Pharma. That's quite a plausible outcome.
Yeah, fair enough. And one of the aspects as well, which is, in your documentation, is that you're expecting your test kit is expecting to be able to gain FDA approval in early 2021. So what would this essentially mean for the American market and the commercialization of the product?
Yeah, so maybe I'll talk about the regulatory submission first. Because our kit will go to people, you can potentially pick it up from a pharmacy, but the result will still come from a physician. So the high risk indication would come from a physician. And due to this, our device, this collection vial kit, falls into a class 1 device, which means we file for FDA, TGA, with TGA being Australia, and CE, which is Europe. Literally the day we submit is the day we have approval, and then it's a ongoing review process. So we expect to have Europe, America, Australia regulatory approvals early next year, and to be able to go to those markets. And what it does or means for the company is potentially early revenue, but also more market validation to speed up an exit event or a deal, as Andrew said, with an Abbott Vascular or a Roche, etc. Once a product is in the market, they they usually just gobble it up. I'll give you an example. Cardio Mems was a company that in the same week they received FDA, they were purchased for $500 million US.
Wow.
And that was for a implantable defibrillator. So, not breakthrough technology, but just give you an idea.
Yeah, fantastic. That's such a I know that purchases from larger corporations to startups with strong IP in the US are constant, and when we compare them back in the UK, which is obviously where I'm from, we used to compare them to America and just see these incredible valuations that were achieved. And I know that over here,
Absolutely.
it's even on a smaller scale, but when products and companies do expand overseas into the US, it's just a whole different ball game, and those kind of valuations are out there, and they are very much so achieved. So look, it's so interesting, and I think really even how you've got to this point is in huge part due to the team that has come together to form what is ESN Clear. So I'd love you to break down a little bit more about the team, the structure, who is involved, and how you all came about to create this company and be working on this incredibly innovative technology.
Yeah, sure. So myself, as I've introduced myself, Johnny Fing, he's our COO. He came along and as co-founder 3 years ago. We used to work together. He was a COO for a company and I was the CFO. And we really liked working together, and ESN sort of was formed back in those days. He has over 20 years experience in licensing from Disney, Pixar, etc., between Walgreens, Walmart, and the likes. So very, very big logistics, retail licensing experience. Then we've got Gustav de Bruin or Gus. He's our CIO. He's actually got a very unique set of skills. He's got software and hardware integration skills. So he worked in the Life Sciences 4 project for Swinburne. So he's in the market. It's actually very hard qualifications and experience to get. We looked, for quite a number of months to find someone who can help us develop the prototype. And he was essentially the main person that put the electronics and designed the electronics of the device and put the electronics together. And we went out to many, many different big companies that charged or quoted us millions of dollars to do so. So it's a very unique skill set that he has. And so he's putting the product strategy and execution strategy together for us. So for the vial kit that we're rolling out in the market, he's looking at what this product is, what's the cheapest cost we can get this product at, etc. So working that out for us. Then Matt McNamara, who's a non-executive director, he's got about 30 years experience in healthcare, but of the 30 years, 10 years was spent at Big Pharma. So Johnson & Johnson, to name one. And then he's got about 20 years of experience within the biotech VC space, the venture capital space, of which 14 was as the CIO for one of the largest ones, Bioscience Managers. So, and Matt is really well known in the industry and is a big connector for us in healthcare. But so is Andrew, and Andrew has obviously introduced himself. Andrew came in about end of last year, start of this year, and same with Matt. He was a little bit later than Andrew. I think he came in at about February this year, where we really started getting traction in terms of partnerships, discussions with AstraZeneca, etc. And we realized, we're at a time where we had to get a professional board and a strong board together to really deal with the big end of town, in the right way.
Yeah, great. And I mean, Andrew, I don't know if you wanted to delve. You already introduced yourself and what you've achieved so far, so maybe there's not too much to add on to that.
Well, I just want to say that friends and colleagues introduced me to ESN Clear, and I really like what they were doing because I'm a major heart failure figure, but also very interested in small to medium enterprises, spin-outs, IP commercialization, and patents. So this was a perfect mix. And for early conversations with Leo and the team, we came up with, I think, what's a compelling strategy. which was niche and identified. So we went into a space that the big diagnostic companies just hadn't gone into. They were all diagnosing and staging heart failure. They weren't predicting heart failure, and that's the huge area that we just found there was an enormous opportunity for us. So we're laser focused now. Some of the challenges, we're a small team, and we have a platform technology that could be applied to other diseases and other spaces. So COVID came along and there were plenty of opportunities to go for a COVID detector test. But no, we stayed laser focused on our first program, which is predicting heart failure and the benefits to be achieved.
Yeah. And I mean, while COVID does get all the attention at the moment, more people have died from heart failure this year alone than people have died from COVID still. And so you still got to focus on the macro without getting too focused on the immediate.
Absolutely. Yeah. But the nice thing about the model is we can out-license this first program and then reinvest some of the proceeds back into other programs in non-dilutive finance. So we're not a one-trick pony.
No, exactly. And I think, just want to add a little bit to that is it's really a platform technology as well. So to then go and find, maybe additional markers, different markers, etc., for either different stage or spectrum of heart failure, maybe a later stage, or then a new disease entirely, maybe prostate cancer or breast cancer or, some sort of a different disease, maybe even Alzheimer's. We could definitely go into it. It requires additional funding to not be just laser focused on the one device, but that's essentially what we look to do in the future.
Yeah, or just one example, half of all heart failures are a thing called HFpEF, where the heart isn't large, it's small, and there's no accurate diagnostic test for that at all. Yeah. So that's just a huge opportunity. It would require just a slight change in our focus, and we could open up a whole new market.
Absolutely.
Yeah, wow. It almost seems like this perfect storm of a product which you've worked on, created, which already has drugs in circulation, which big pharma are offering for the consumer. So ultimately, it doesn't seem obvious, what challenges you're going to have to overcome as a business. So I'd really love to understand what actual challenges you do anticipate having in the future as a result of your growth, and what milestones that you kind of perceive that you're going to have to overcome. And obviously, in turn, that's really going to tie into what you think the future looks like for ESN Clear.
Well, I think the initial strategy, ESN had before Andrew came along was very much detecting as early as possible, but detecting heart failure, and then in some meaningful way add value to pharma or to medical devices companies or health insurers. Not laser sure how to do that. And when Andrew came along, he advised us many of the big pharma on their clinical trials. Big figure in the heart failure space, knows who's doing what, and he really just changed and sort of repositioned the company's strategy to this extreme value. And as you say, perfect storm. Well, yes, it is. If it wasn't for the dapagliflozin, empagliflozin, this SGLT2 inhibitor drug class development over the last 12 months, then we wouldn't be in this extreme, value seat as we are today. It's not like 3 years ago we planned for this exact value chain. It progressed and happened. So I like to say, roll with the punches. Well, if you get the right team members on board, people that understand the market, you're able to swing, to the right strategic pathways to increase the value. Sorry, Robin, I've missed one of your elements of your question.
No, you were really talking about how it almost does seem like a perfect storm, but you've kind of rolled through and rolled with the punches and grown. And yes, while the pharmaceutical industry has kind of released these drugs which do help, and that does seem like the perfect time for ESN Clear. I was really keen to understand what you perceive some of the challenges for ESN Clear to be, and what you're going to have to overcome.
Well, as we've experienced over the last 12 months, especially, is even if we've got promoters within big pharma. So, with AstraZeneca, one of the senior group level directors, Olivier Delanoy, is a big promoter. He even talks to some of our biggest potential investors if he takes calls. So he's a big promoter for the company. They really want to do something meaningful with ESN Clear, but it's a very large organization. So we deal with 8 different group level directors that are spread over 5 or 6 different countries, and including myself, probably 6 different accents. So it is quite a big bureaucracy that you need to work with. And I think if from where we sit at the moment, it's not so much technological challenges, it's more just working with pharma and big pharma to get speed to market. That is very important, because if you go at their pace, it might take us twice as long as what we want the product to hit the market. So we see that as a challenge, not necessarily a big challenge, but it's something that we need to constantly be cognizant of and manage.
Absolutely. No, 100%. And while I'd love to ask you to kind of, highlight any areas as well that you'd really like to delve on and further go into further detail on, I'd love to invite everybody who's listening in to ask their questions, which perhaps haven't been answered as of yet. Before I do hand over to yourself, and obviously we'll pick those questions up as we're going along. But Leo, were there other aspects of perhaps even the raise itself and ESN Clear that you feel that we maybe haven't touched on that you'd really like to touch on in this webinar?
Yeah, well, potentially just maybe on the funding round, some of the questions we have received over the course of, let's say the last 2 or 3 months, is people asking about, why don't we go to VCs? Why use a platform like Birchal to raise funds, etc. And the answer is simple but also complex. And I'll try and break it down and keep it as simple as possible.
Yeah.
One thing is we've got a global product and we are trying to build awareness as far and wide as possible. So with a platform like Birchal, what we get is we're able to then advertise the business, its product, and invite people to come and have a fairly deep look into what we're doing without breaking any laws. So we're able to invite as many people as we can, and there's tens of thousands of people now that's looked at our Facebook ads and Google ads and on LinkedIn, everywhere. So it gives us that reach. So it's not always just the money. Then I guess on the money side of things, we have been talking to a number of VCs and funds, etc. But it's also selecting the right partners, because if we get, the VC model is very much they come in, they take a controlling stake or a large stake, and from that point on, it's really significantly driven by them. So the direction of the company, etc. And it's also very dilutive. What tends to happen as well is a lot of these VCs come in and it's just they want a quick turnaround in terms of return, meaning 6 to 12 months, which could mean a valuation difference of a multiple of 5, right? So if you just stayed in for another year, you could have made 3 or 5 times more of a return. But a lot of these VCs are very short-term focused. So it's really selecting the right partner. We want someone to come in with the journey, let's say a 2 to 3 year journey, not a 6-month journey. And hence why this is also the reason why we don't look at listing, for this exact reason. Listing in, especially in Australia on the ASX, would mean a lot lower valuation. So it might mean a quicker return, but you might lose out on a massive multiple just a year or 2 from now. So we the way that we raise funds have been getting people involved that are passionate about the disease we're tackling. And so our cap table is made of the biggest investors we have are usually people that's themselves had an event and they are investors, or people that understand the disease, they've had it in their family, etc. And they really back us and support us more than just a quick in and out, financial return, which is really helpful. A startup company the size of us, we don't sit back and have thousands of people that buy and sell shares. It's very much a team and a small team, and people come in, and we like to be close to our investors and keep them in the loop. And they every now and then we talk to our investors, and we all discuss of where we're going, and keep it excited, and inform people of where we're going and what's happened over the last 3-4 months, etc. So I think that's important to understand, is we select our the way that our message goes out, and the type of people we bring in.
Yeah, great. No, and look, it's great to hear when a company does really favor something like equity crowdfunding, really not because of just the money. I think for a number of businesses, there are a number of routes. And if a business is simply looking to sort of just raise money and move on very quickly, equity crowdfunding is probably not the right route for them. Although, for some people that is the case, and they just want to be able to come in very quickly and raise funds and move on. It's really about being able to go out to a large audience and getting something as important as the test kit that you have developed and you've worked on for such a long time out to so many other people. And you've been on 9 News recently and got so much coverage there, and it's just I feel that there's so much value in a company being able to gain that coverage and get in front of so many different eyeballs, so that a lot of people can see it. And the reception that you receive and the comments that you see on there are kind of almost mind-boggling for people who know of a loved one, or they know of somebody who really could have benefited from this product.
Absolutely.
And I'm sure that comes in on a very frequent basis.
Well, a high percentage of our shareholders are actually people who want to have a commercial return. They want to be part of a major success story, but they also want to contribute to preventing and curing heart failure. So there's the double benefit, and that's really attractive to the crowdfunding model.
Yes,
most definitely. No, that's great. And were there perhaps any other more detailed areas that you feel that maybe we haven't covered, that maybe you mentioned the clinical trial on a high level earlier, perhaps as a subject area that you'd like to delve into a little bit more?
I might just draw the distinction, if it's not clear yet. I might just help clarify any confusion as to what the first and second product of ESN Clear is and will be. So the first product, this vial kit collection kit, there's not much more to develop on it. We're going to run the clinical study, but this product will be sold separately, not with a drug. So we're not testing a drug with this device yet. So this is the first physical product that can and will be sold in the market. The second product that we're working on, if we forget about the drug trial and the drug for just a minute, the second product we're working on is this handheld device the size of an electric toothbrush.
Yeah.
Essentially, it does exactly the same thing. Both are immunoassays. One is dry chemistry, which means it's got shelf life, and you can, you don't need to keep it in a fridge, etc. And the other one's wet chemistry, so that test is done in the lab. So the vial kit is that wet chemistry done in the lab. The handheld device is that dry chemistry, size of electric toothbrush. It can hang on a shelf. You can buy it, you can test it. It's immediate result, etc. But it gives you a result, and a physician doesn't need to be involved. Therefore, it's a higher class, class 2 or class 3 FDA device, which takes about 12 months to get FDA approved. So it takes longer time to get approved, but we don't need to wait for that product to go into a clinical trial with pharma, because really, as I mentioned, this immunoassay, the core biomarker test, both have the same biomarker test. And really, we're putting this biomarker test into the trial, not so much the product. The product is almost irrelevant. It's about testing our markers and that accuracy, and then testing the drug on them. So first and second product, regardless of where we are in the spectrum of bringing them to market, we have these markers. And in any given moment, if we sign a pharma deal today, we could be ready to facilitate them with the needed test in as short as 2 months, to give them the the test and test the markers in a trial.
Mm.
So I just wanted to sort of clarify that we've got a product,
Yeah.
but there's there's distinction between with a drug and without a drug as well.
And I might just say there's another major outcome of this development, and that is particularly with an Australian flavour, is we have a very high prevalence of heart failure in the community, major world leaders in heart failure, but 97% of them are in the capital cities.
Mm.
And we have remote, regional and indigenous communities with a high burden of heart failure. We know we could do all this, but we can't bring the patient in to see us every couple of weeks. So if we can embed these long shelf life devices, they can test it, regardless of where they are. They can test it. It can be sent by Bluetooth or other technology. And I can sit in the capital city office and say, that person needs to increase the dose of frusemide or take more dapagliflozin, or that person does need to come to the hospital without losing track of them and without costing a fortune, disrupting their home life. So there's huge possibilities for the Australian system.
No, absolutely. I think it's so interesting, especially when you break that down. And we've actually had a question here from Ashley, who's asked if this is a product that a local GP will recommend for their patients. And is this a product that a doctor in a hospital will use to help identify issues with their inpatients?
Yeah, I might come in here. The local GP, yes, there are multiple uses. So local GP is likely, first of all, to say, look, I've got 500 people with diabetes and all of them are at risk of heart failure, but it's not a huge risk. It's just, it's 5 times above everyone else. And I can't afford to see them all and give them all dapagliflozin or empagliflozin. I really want to know where the rich is. So they just say to the practice nurse, look, put one of these out in the waiting room, and then we'll test the people. And I just get the positive results and I bring them in and I say, well, look, you're the one I need to concentrate. So that's one. Yeah. And the second use is they'd say to an elderly patient, look, you've been in and out of hospital 4 times this year and it's a disaster for you and it's dangerous and scary. Why don't we get you to take this at home and you can monitor it every couple of days and I can keep tabs on you. And so they're 2 immediate uses. Yeah,
absolutely. And the actual second product, the one which you kind of mentioned, is the size of a toothbrush, very applicable at home. It can have Bluetooth, will have Bluetooth connectivity. When are you aiming to release this product commercially?
That would be in around the Q4 of 22. Reason being, it's about 12 months of development still for that product, but also the 12-month FDA process. So it's about let's call it December 2022.
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. And look, I feel like I've really covered so many of the questions which I wanted to ask, and you've been receiving throughout this whole process of running your expression of interest. And to kind of summarize the expression of interest, we are coming up to the final days of the expression of interest. So if anybody hasn't submitted their expression of interest, I will obviously include the Birchal link to the follow-up here. But I'd love to highlight that the investment offer is going to be opening next week, which will give everybody the opportunity to review the offer document, which is probably where absolutely every single question you might want to ask about ESN Clear will be answered. And then you'll have an opportunity to be able to actually purchase shares in ESN Clear itself. And so, look, we don't have any more questions which have come through the Q&A. If you've got any final ones, please do send them through right now. But Leo and Andrew, if there's anything else that you wanted to cover off and finish with, then I'd love you to kind of summarize what you'd like to say.
Yeah, we just want to say, look, we really appreciate everyone joining today to learn more about ESN Clear, and we're really excited about this process and what the future holds for us. So thank you very much for joining us on this journey.
Yeah, totally echo the sentiments. We're on a great journey here, and we're welcome having Birchal and all your community on board.
Awesome. No, it's been fantastic, and I can't wait to be opening up this offer next week and really just seeing all these investors be able to come in and own a small part of the business itself, because there are so many emotional ties to it, as well as the potential huge commercial gain. And I think that's what I personally love about working with businesses like yours, who really do want those investors, not only for commercial gain, but also because they want to be able to grow with them and have them come in and own a piece of the business, which they really feel very personally connected to. So thank you very much, guys. It's been fantastic. And thanks to everybody who's joined in today. If you would love to watch the episode again, I will absolutely be following up with a link for that. So yeah, then you can watch it at any time. So thanks very much, everyone. Enjoy the rest of the day.
Okay.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Yeah.